Alright, so this morning we're going to go ahead and work on the mallet head, and it will be very advantageous to you if you have your pegboard project open here in the Google Drive. The title blocks that we've been using so far, they do help a little bit with the pegboard, but the best information that you can get to help you really is probably down here in this document, and it kind of explains the revolve feature and making this sketch. Also, it goes through the directions for how to create a work plane so you can drill a hole and put a sketch on a circular object. Okay, so that's something that you might want to refer back and forth to as you're doing this on your own if you're not doing it with me in class. All right. So the first step we're always going to do is start a new standard IPT and create a 2D sketch on the XY plane. Okay? Now, in the instructions, they tell us to refer to a sketch, and they give us a sketch that really doesn't have any dimensions, which is a little bit of a pain. So what we did a while back is we created this sketch, and we'll refer back to this as we draw. But if you notice, the overall dimensions of the sketch are a 3-inch by 0.875 inch tall rectangle, and that's where we'll start, is by drawing a rectangle like that. So I'm going to go back to Inventor. I'm going to draw myself a rectangle, and my width was 0.875 and my height was 3. So you guys can go ahead and do that if you're ready. 0.875 by 3. So it should be kind of a tall, skinny rectangle then when you get it done. On our sketch, we also had a couple of circles here. They're labeled as 0.125, but because it's an arch right now, that's the radius size, so we need to double that when we draw these circles in. So when we draw our circles in, I'm just going to go to my circle tool, and I want to put it somewhere right on this line. I don't want to lock it into either corner, but I'm going to draw 2 of them, and they're both going to be 0.25. So I'm going to do one there. I'm going to do one here. Make sure you have the center of your circle right on the line here. Okay? So going back to our drawing, we have a distance here between the edges of the 2 circles, which usually isn't the way you do it. Usually you only go from center point to center point, but it's what we have, so we're going to go ahead and try to put this in. You see we've got 1.75 between the edges of both circles. So I'm going to go to my dimension tool, and I'm going to try to get the edge of the circle to the edge of the circle. And it might not let me do that, okay? Not letting me do it. So I'm going to try to come up here to my trim tool. Okay, so if you look up where it says modify and you see the scissors up here, that's your trim tool, okay? So I'm going to try this and hope that this works for me. I'm going to click on it. Now if I hold over the part of the circle that needs to go away according to the sketch and click it, it'll go away. Alright? I'm also going to hold over this part of the line that needs to go away and click that. I'm going to do the same thing down here for the bottom circle. Part of the circle that's going to go away and the part of the line that's going to go away. Now we're really starting to look like our sketch, correct? Okay? So now I'm going to go back again and I'm going to try to get that dimension in here. So I'm going to click dimension, and I'm going to try to go the edge of the circle to the edge of the circle, and it's going to let me do that now, okay? So if you remember from the sketch, that was 1.75. Now, some of your drawings look different than mine, and what we've got here is we've got this line and this line that need to be equal, correct? So if you look at our sketch, they're equal, okay? But there's no dimension there for us. And that's kind of so we could show you guys another tool or a different tool that we haven't used before. I could figure it out mathematically if I wanted to. But up here in our constraints, I think yesterday we may have talked about the parallel constraint that locks two lines parallel. Down here in this corner, there's an equal constraint that will make two parts equal to each other. So if I click on equal, and then I click the top line and the bottom line, it'll make them the same length. So I know I just saw some of you kind of jump when your part moved to be like it was supposed to be. So that's a good thing that it's working, okay? Again, that was the equal constraint, and I just clicked the top line and the bottom line, okay? According to my instructions, which I will page back to here in a little bit, at this point we're ready to revolve it. And revolving is when you go into the isometric view and you add depth to something, just like we do when we extrude things. So at this point, I'm ready to finish my sketch. So you can go ahead and do that. And then if you notice up here, instead of extruding, we're going to go to revolve. So go ahead and click on revolve. Notice that the main body of this part is already lit up blue, right? It's already selected. So that's the profile. The profile is already selected. Next, since this is lit up, it's asking us what's the axis, what does it actually rotate around, and that's this middle part right here. So I click right here, and it revolves your mallet head. It's kind of neat for those of you who haven't done that before. So I'm going to just click the check mark for OK. I've got my mallet head here, the main part of it, okay? Let's look back into our instructions. Excuse me. And let's talk about putting the chamfer on it that it talks about right here. Place a 1/16 inch chamfer on each end. So it looks like it's just got a chamfer on each end here. That's just a 3D tool we can use. So if you look up here, this one right here is chamfer, okay? So you can go back to Inventor. We'll click on chamfer, and it says it wants a 1/16 inch. So I'm just going to highlight that. I'm going to type in 1/16 because your number may be different, okay? Then all I want to do is click on the edges that I would like to chamfer. I'm going to do the top edge. I'm going to do the bottom edge. Some people go through and they chamfer each one of these edges, and I'm fine with that, okay? It does make it look kind of neat. But if you want to just do the top and bottom, you can, okay? But notice all those edges that are highlighted blue now, when I click my check mark, they're all going to give it that kind of smoothed edge, chamfered look. So that's pretty neat, okay? Now the next part that it talks about in your instructions is the part that's the toughest and most confusing for people. But the directions here are pretty good, okay? So really make sure you're following along as we do this. We can't just draw on the edge of a round part. We've got to put a flat work plane on it here. So it talks about putting a work plane on the YZ plane. So I'm going to come back here to Inventor. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of get this thing squared back up to where I was. And we may have to flip it again, but I just like to start with it square. So I'm going to come over here into the origin in the browser bar. And I'm going to maximize so I can see everything. And if you remember from our directions, it said we want the YZ plane. So I'm going to click on the YZ plane over here in my browser bar. I'm going to click up here on just a regular plane. but I want it to be right on. I'm going to have to go back here and click again. I want it to be right on the edge, so I'm going to click on the outside. And now if I rotate it, I can see that my work plane should be right on the outside of my part. My computer's lagging a little bit right now, so can you guys see that okay? Once I have that work plane on that part, which might be the hardest thing to do, okay, then what I want to do is I want to put a sketch on here. So when I put a sketch onto a work plane, I've got to click on the corner of it. Now I've got my sketch, and I've got to put a center point on here so that I can drill the hole. Okay, so I'm going to go to point, and if I can put it right in the middle, that's awesome. Okay, but I'm not for sure if it's in the middle, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to project the geometry, which all that does is, see how that line lights up? It's just allowing me to use the geometry that's behind the work plane to dimension from. Okay, so to make sure it's in the middle, I'm going to click from here to here, and it should be 1.5 because the whole thing was 3 inches tall. And then from here to here, it should be 0.875, that number we had earlier. Okay. Once that is good, I want to finish the sketch, and I want to go to the hole feature. It's already lighting up here, kind of like when we did that practice hole. Okay. Looking back at the directions, and they're a little fuzzy to read. This should look familiar to you from doing this before. It tells us that the hole is a threaded hole, just a plain drilled hole, and it gives us all the specifications. 0.875 total depth, 0.625 thread depth. So I'm going to change this total depth to 0.875. And then this to 0.625. Notice I had to change mine over to a threaded hole to get all this correct. Okay. There was one more thing on here that I do need to look at, and that was what size this is, and it's pretty hard to see. It's 0.625 down here. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to find 0.625. It automatically changed my threads to what they need to be. Looks good to me, so I'm going to click OK. And there we go. Okay. If I want to, I can come over here into my browser bar, and I can right click on my work plane and see how it says visibility. If I uncheck it, then that goes away, and it makes it a little easier to see my part. Alright, so that is the mallet head. Hopefully you can follow through with that. If not, make sure you let me know, and we'll work through any problems that you may have.